I guess I never really realized how rough Sidney was.
They lived a part of history that a lot of people never heard about. Cemetery started around 1868, about a year after Sidney was established in 1867. Civil War was over and they were building the Transcontinental Railroad across the United States. And division head at the time for this part of the country was Sidney Dillon. So that's how we wound up with that name, Sidney. By some terms you'd say that's a bit feminine, so Eastern press always called it Sinful Sidney to match what was going on here.
Yeah.
They had over 100 criminal cases in a matter of just 3 years for murder and attempted murder. And that's just the ones they knew about. That's largely how Boothill, they called them sunset to sunrise burials. There'd be a fresh plot of ground dug out in the morning. And of course it originally started so they'd have somewhere to put the soldiers from Fort Sidney. And then it just became kind of a dumping ground for all the outlaws and everything else. And
this was a rough, bad town.
toughest town on the tracks.
Toughest town on the tracks.
Eventually, the railroad hit Deadwood, and some of the gold rush traffic definitely diminished here. And this cemetery, then about 1889, had its last burial. And that's when they started the other cemetery. This one been pretty run down, and but the problem was there were 1920 soldiers that were documented buried here. And they didn't know how many other people because they're makeshift graves, and some of them buried early morning, whatever, and, late at night. And so the commander of the American Legion was also the mayor of Sidney at the time, and he convinced the congressman from Nebraska to pass some funding through Congress to excavate the cemetery and to move the soldiers to Fort McPherson. So they allocated enough money for 20 soldiers to be removed. By the time he found that 20th soldier, they had dug up 211 bodies. Of course, they stopped right there.
Well, they never really kept any documents. I mean, as far as, wasn't any headstones, or there was a mound of dirt, and they figured that a soldier was there. Dowsing, actually really what that is you got these two metal rods, and what they do, when you go across the ground that's been disturbed or anything like that, throws off like electrical charge.
And that's like supposed to be where the bodies were, or are still?
That's where a disturbance in the ground is at, right there either.
Well, whole history of Sidney is kind of wrapped around this cemetery, I hope people enjoy it when they come out here and they read the stories and they get a glimpse of history. But those first 20 years, holy smoke. Yeah. Man, we were some kind of old Wild West town. It really truly was Sinful Sidney. And from 1922, it was totally abandoned.
Oh yeah.
And it was forgotten. And they wanted to bury the past. When they tried to get Sidney out of that tainted Old West reputation, Farming and Ranching and Homestead Act, Kincaid Act, they wanted people to think they were an enterprising community, not this rough old west town there to take your life in your own hands across the border. So, that's why they buried it. They didn't want to talk about it. Now it's kind of fun.